Welcome to the JP8 Report with 2026 election interview with Harker Heights Mayor candidate Howard Scot Arey. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Welcome to the JP8 Report. As we get started, if you're watching this and you're not a follower of the JP8 Report, please click that follow button and give us a like. And please share the podcast to help Scott out with his campaign. And I hope you enjoy the interview. So welcome to the interview.
It's really great to be here.
All right. Appreciate it. I've known Scott for a long time, so I know a little bit about him, but I'm going to let him do all the talking. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I will. First of all, I'm running for mayor of Harker Heights. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get on this show and really spread the message of what I'm standing for. But of course, that starts before those races. Who am I? Well, we've known each other a long time, and I'm going to start with that, and maybe go back a little bit. I'm a businessman. I've been in business for 13 years as the owner of Solar CenTex in Harker Heights. We've been installing solar for since 2013, since I retired from the Army. We've been doing well, and I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed being a small business owner. But probably before that, I was an Army officer. I spent 25 years in the Army. Range of assignments everywhere from Germany at the end of the Cold War to duty in Desert Storm, OIF-1, Afghanistan with OEF, at the Pentagon, a whole range of assignments that really each one of those brought like some element of who I am today. But probably the most important part of who I am is I've been married to Jennifer for 33 years. She's a retired clean ISD school teacher. Kids love her. She's really the best person I know. And she's home right now, taking a break. We're fortunate to have two wonderful daughters. They're both adult daughters. Arcadia is the oldest. She's a Harker Heights grad, and she works as a senior staffer for a member of Congress in D.C. And then our younger daughter, Julia, she's a registered nurse working at Parkland Hospital up in Dallas.
Up in Dallas.
Yeah, she's working in the trauma unit. So it's amazing what she sees every day.
It's amazing how your Army career, my Army career are almost similar, except for I was enlisted and you were an officer.
Well, we both know
Wow.
It was a real treat to be in the Army, and I find it almost embarrassing when someone says thank you for your service, because it's just not really my nature to take accolades. I tell folks, and I mean it when I say it, it was my pleasure, and we both know that not every assignment was, gee, this is wonderful, but I don't think I'd ever go back and trade the 25 years in the Army and the 4 years at West Point I had for anything in the world. It's opened up so many doors that never would have been open to me as a kid.
My worst assignment, I was an Army recruiter.
Oh yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah.
You might want, probably don't want to do that again.
No, never, never. And you went to West Point?
I did. I graduated from high school, and I was just a kind of a average middle kid who had probably slightly above average grades and played multiple varsity sports, and I was fortunate enough, I was nudged by my parents a little bit to check it out. My grandfather, who I didn't know, was a career Army officer. He was a transportation warrant officer, and my parents encouraged me to go to West Point, and that's what I did. I graduated 4 years later and went to flight school and became an Army aviator, and that's the career I spent.
Wow, that's cool. I met some pretty good pilots in my time. I lived next door to one.
That's right.
I was telling about, yeah. So that was my next question, though. But that was cool. Oh, and you were an aviator.
I was.
So what choppers?
Well, I went. My first assignment was in Cobras. So I flew a Cobra with the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. So when I was a brand new lieutenant, I showed up to what was still the Czechoslovakian and East German border. My first flight to the border, I'm wearing body armor, and for a 22-year-old kid, this is pretty big deal. And what meets us at the border, but a Czechoslovakian Mi-24, which follows up and down the border. So I was there when the East German and Czech borders came down, and it was pretty wild to see.
Like the 1K zone. Don't go in the 1K zone.
Yeah, but we could fly up to the very border. So we had called red catchers. They were border qualified pilots, and I didn't become one in that first year before we went to Desert Storm, but we would literally fly to the very border.
So did you fly Apaches also?
No, I didn't fly Apaches.
Just Cobras?
No, no. It's funny. When I went to the advanced course at Fort Rucker after my first assignment, they were standing up the 2 new attack battalions in Korea. And I remember telling my assignments officer, this was before I was married, I really like to fly Apaches. And I think the assignments officer says, man, I got a sucker. He goes, well, we're standing up. There's 2 new units going to Korea. And I said, sure, whatever it takes, I want to fly Apaches. And then he said, well, now he knows he has a sucker. He goes, we're going to need maintenance test pilots. I said, whatever it takes. And no, the two transitions went to 2 guys that had just branch transferred from the field artillery. And I went off to Fort Riley to a division CAV squadron. And that's where I was a newlywed with Jennifer. And from there, I got in the Black Hawk business. And that's where I spent the rest of my career. It was good work.
Cool. So have you ever held an elected office or been a member of a committee?
I have been. No, I have not been an elected member, but I have been a member of several committees. And probably the one that I'll say I'm most proud of because it has the most local benefit is I was appointed by the Bell County Judge and Commissioners to be their representative on the Bell County Central Appraisal District. And I spent several years there. And I think I was picked because I had a really in-depth knowledge of tax code and tax advocacy for people. And I think the county commissioners saw that and asked that I would represent them. And then my peers eventually selected me to be the vice chair of that committee. And I really enjoyed my duty there. I hope we can talk maybe a little bit more about that because
you can
a lot of misconceptions sometimes about the CAD, especially from the elected side,
right,
which will blame all tax woes on appraisal districts. But I've also done things on other boards. I was the board chairman of the Texas Solar Energy Society, not once but twice. And that's a statewide nonprofit that does educational outreach and advocacy for solar, rooftop solar. And I did that, I spent probably 4 years doing that. And I met some great people across Texas. I mean, everywhere from El Paso up to Lubbock, to the Dallas area, down to Austin and San Antonio. There's a wide-ranging advocacy, and I was very proud to serve as that board chairman for a couple of years. Also have been on the board of the Temple Cultural Activity Center. And what was really interesting about that is I was invited to join that after I had done a big solar pavilion for the activity center. And I think they appreciated my work and maybe the conversation, and they invited me to join that board. That was fun too.
I remember when you built that pergola at the Bell County Expo. You built it several years, for your display and stuff. So, what are the duties of the Harker Heights mayor?
Oh, I think the Harker Heights mayor. I mean, probably the first one is to advocate the benefits of that city to all the citizens. I mean, technically he is managing the city council meetings. But first and foremost, I think is to showcase the benefits of Harker Heights and what a great city it is. And I chose to live there. I chose to live there when I was still active duty. And then when I retired from the military, I knew I wanted to retire here, and I knew I wanted to live in Harker Heights, and that's where I settled when I retired in 2013. So the mayor's got wide-ranging responsibilities. Some would say ceremonial, and take pictures at Fort Hood, and go to different meetings, but also a lot of real duties. I mean, getting a representation on some of the regional boards, like the Central Texas Council of Governments. Of course, getting out, meeting citizens that are going to retire from Fort Hood and come here. But probably the most important one, and that's to set the direction for the city, and I think also set the climate for the council to operate under.
Okay. So, what are your views on economic development?
Economic development. That's funny. You've known me for a long time. I consider myself a fiscal conservative with a little bit of a libertarian streak. You know what I mean by that? You're not going to find me a social warrior, and we certainly don't need a social warrior on the stage of city government. But I've always been a fiscal conservative, and I don't care what level of government you're at. I think we need people who are fiscal conservatives. The fiscal conservative doesn't mean being cheap with our money and not doing anything. It means respectful of the taxpayers, making sure we divide wants and needs, and making sure we're taking care of those needs first. And only after we do that are we getting after what people want. Too often, people are wanting to do the cool, sexy stuff giving the money away to the nonprofits, putting the murals on the walls, but they don't take care of the hard stuff, like taking care of roads, making sure that taxes are kept as low as possible. So, yeah, that's probably the best way to go in to describe my thoughts is fiscal conservative, and that's probably really one of the big reasons why I'm running is that.
Yeah, because we know businesses move in and out all the time.
Yep.
And you have to replace those. I mean, we like here in Cove, we scored that veterans out. That's going to be awesome here. But at the same time, Harker Heights isn't too much smaller than Cove, but y'all got Harker Heights.
We have 36,000 people, and it's interesting. You watch because your question, and I probably didn't answer it fully, which is what do I think about economic development? So, is it the place of government to do economic development? Well, certainly to set the conditions.
Right.
And that means a city with great road infrastructure, a low tax rate, because we just talked about it before we came in here. We watched Starbucks going to move to Tennessee because of tax rate. We watched Yamaha move from California to Georgia. Businesses will go to places where the tax climate and the infrastructure and the workforce is ready. And that's where they want to go, where people have money to spend. So what is the role in Harker Heights? Too often people think the city councils will pick individual places to go. And to a degree, they do that through the zoning and future land use maps,
Right.
where they set, here's what we see as areas for restaurants here, places where we want industrial and medium-sized businesses. But it's not the job of the council to say, I want a Starbucks on that corner, and I want a Wiggly HEB on this corner. That's not the requirement. But there is certainly a role in Harker Heights for economic development. And it's been fascinating to watch because my city has, over the years, I've watched them take this hodgepodge of different studies. We had one consultant trying to pick stores to go into Market Heights. And then we had this latest tips report, which is another one. And then we've had this Economic Development Corporation that didn't do anything in 2 years. I think it met 3 times. And I think each time was generally to get another study or approve the minutes from the meeting before. And now the latest iteration of it is the Economic Development Advisory Board. And the best I can tell is that my 2 incumbents are arguing over whether there should be 5 members or 7 members of an unpaid advisory board. I would say we often give money, or they try to give money, 380 agreements, and you've watched those, taxpayer tax abatements, whether it's giving back sales taxes. That's generally the form of those tax incentives, is to rebate the sales taxes the companies generate. But it's been funny because they've been doing this with businesses that are unproven. But every time I drive down FM 2410, I look and I see long-held businesses. I see ACOC Construction, Cooper and Bright Plumbing,
Right.
Bass Electric. Now I see Kane HVAC. I see some of the other long-held businesses in this company.
Those are primary level businesses.
Those are people that built Harker Heights, and I'm sometimes I wonder, what are we doing to seek out the expertise of these people who've got a proven track record and obviously want to be here because their companies have been here for so
Right.
long?
So does Harker Heights have an EDCA type A?
No, so it has
Or is it
nothing
just
now.
a board?
Supposedly it's disbanded.
Because we have an EDCA here, type A.
You do.
Which allows us, they're only supposed to get primary level jobs, because when you give a primary level employment maker, it spins off secondary and tertiary type jobs and stuff, which expands the development of the entire the city.
I think Fred Jobs.
Fred Welch.
Okay, well,
Fred Welch.
Your EDC, and there's some really great Temple EDC. I mean, it's a separate EDC. It's funded. It has the authority to make deals. We don't have that corporation in Harker Heights. And what we've had has been unproductive. Now, we've certainly brought in some businesses here and there. So you won't hear me say that nothing's coming in, because we do get some growth, and that's great. And I applaud every one of those. But the board we did have, the mayor, my opponent, insisted on sharing it. It has no money. And I would argue at a certain point, your role as the mayor it's keeping you busy enough that you probably ought not be the guy doing economic development, especially if you've never been a business owner or a business developer.
Right. So, without naming the business, right up if you go north from where your shop is, on the right, they got that brand new tilt-out building.
Yeah, the Gambit House.
Oh, okay. I wasn't going to name.
No,
Are they still open?
No, they closed down.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well, it is, but it's an example where this company, unproven, and I think the original owners of it, who still have one of their businesses in that building, and I won't name names anymore, but they got a Chapter 380 agreement, and of course, most economic agreements require either minimum property tax level, therefore property tax receipts, or sales tax revenues, or employment numbers. And that company, kind of quiet folded away. And I went back to the finance director and asked if we had given incentives, because there were incentives under that Chapter 380 agreement. Thank goodness the comptroller now has a very visible database, so anybody can look up, no matter, really, for any city, what has my city signed up to give away to somebody else?
Right. Yeah. So what specifically, bad grammar, what specifically needs to be changed in the current budget and development plan?
Well, let me start in the budget. And I'm going to start right with the first thing I'm for, is the taxation. Taxation has always been really the thing that has centered all my advocacy over the last 8 years. You've seen it from Central Texas College to the Bell County Commissioners Court, and certainly here in Harker Heights. And the big thing is I watch my city of Harker Heights, even though it has a stated reserve policy of 3 months of operating reserves to be kept aside, it keeps over 7 months. So it has a requirement by policy to keep $8 million, and that's basically for cash flow purposes in emergencies. And it keeps an extra $11 million above that. In any circle your readers and listeners would be in, and certainly in mine, we would call that massive excess taxation.
Right.
I mean, it is. It's a lot of extra money. And I tell people, because my opponents will say, well, it's nice to have this money for emergencies. What they have de facto done is taken this massive $11 million bond, but unlike a bond where a voter would actually have a vote to approve it, you have no say on how this council approves it. This is $11 million they can use any way they want.
Why don't they?
Great question, and especially in light of the road report that came out. Now, a lot of folks I hear, like, pavement condition inventory report. What is that? Well, let me tell you what.
Welcome to Copper's Cove.
Yeah. Well, we have substantial issues in Harker Heights, and me and my dad just took a drive around North Harker Heights, and I say North Harker Heights, the section over Veterans, and it's really bad. But I'm not talking just that section, really across my city. But you don't have to take my word for it. You only have to look at that study, which was commissioned by the city council. They came back in December of 2025. And the report's pretty damning. 41% of Harker Heights roads are either poor, very poor, or serious conditions. Right. And I think there's another 20% are in fair condition. And the big question...
We're well above that here. And we just instituted a street utility maintenance fee that we all, oh my goodness, we didn't like it, but I understand why we need it.
Yep, well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. But to your question is, they've got all this extra money. What are they going to use it for? Well, I know one of my opponents, the current mayor, he wants to take over Dana Peak Park from the Corps of Engineers. He wants to take something that's fully funded by the federal government and commercialize it and turn it into a city park. And I will tell you, I have not seen so much social media pushback on a topic than that. And we can go into that. But that's not what we should be spending our money on. We've got $11 million, and we probably have that much in deferred road maintenance. And I had a former mayor tell me,
it's a lot more than $11 million.
It's probably, I think it's...
Because with us, we're looking at like $42 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it starts back over. Yeah. It's a never-ending process.
Maintenance is never...
Like here, we got like $4.2 million a year with our street utility fee that we're doing. And it's all dedicated. Every dime of it is dedicated to the roads
So
itself.
it's interesting you say that, because that 4.2, because right now there's about $1.5 million spent under there. And in that study, they said you're going to need to get at least to $4.5 million a year to make a dent and kind of
Yeah,
reverse.
because when you run out of that million, what do? Nothing, because it stops.
Yeah.
Because it's not in the budget.
Well, they haven't put it in the budget, so they collected this money. It sits in reserves, and like, what are you going to use it for? And it ought not be for a special project like taking.
So is the ideal fund 90 days required by Texas law?
So there's a lot of best practices. Texas Municipal League, I don't think actually has a set recommendation. I think Belton carries a 30% reserve, which is a little over 3 months. Most cities carry 3 months. My recommendation is we go to a 4-month reserve. So we increase the reserve level from 3 to 4 months, and then we take the rest of that money. And I want to do this by city charter, not just by council vote. I want to basically say we're either going to use that for property tax relief, or we're going to dedicate that to projects, and then we're going to lock it in, and only voters will be allowed to change that out.
Okay.
And I'd like to dedicate that to road maintenance right now, especially in light of that road pavement condition inventory report.
Okay. So what are your views on property tax?
My views on property taxes is I don't like paying them, but Texas has decided that property taxes are pretty much the only leg of a 3-legged stool, and government is going to be funded by something. But I can completely understand the angst people have with property taxes, because most folks don't understand it, but partly people have misassigned blame for the issue. You've been on an elected board with the Central Texas College Board of Directors. I've sat on the appraisal district, so I understand the appraisal side that leads into the property tax decisions. Property taxes are really all we have. We don't have income taxes. We have sales taxes, and that's really the other leg of this stool.
Yeah.
The problem with property taxes is we really ask it to do too much for Texas, and certainly we ask it to do too much here locally. That's what funds fire, police, roads, is property taxes. Now, sales taxes are pretty much, I'm going to say, around 50% of what our property, or equal to what our property taxes are, and that's a good thing. But if you really look, in one of the other roles, I'm going to go back to what your question was, what's the role of a mayor? I think the role of a mayor is also to come back with the council and say when law in Texas needs to change. And I'm going to give you one quick example of that. Texas collects an 8.25% sales tax rate, and right now the community only keeps 2%.
Right.
0.5% to the county, 1.5% to the city, and state of Texas says, "Thank you very much. I'll keep the other 6.25."
And then they use that to fund schools.
Probably most of their money in Texas comes from sales tax. But what does Texas have every year? It has extra. It has a surplus.
Right.
So how is it they've got so much money? Is because they've collected so much on sales tax. So some have advocated, not many, hey, lower the sales tax rate. And I can certainly appreciate that. But my argument would be, why don't we let communities keep more of that 8.25? I think another 1 to 2 percentage points more ought to come down, because every dollar in sales tax revenue is a dollar less that has to be collected from property tax revenue. And we just talked about economic development. What incentive does our Economic Development Corporation, when they keep $2 out of $8, every $8.25 is collected? We ought to basically be able to financially incentivize these economic development corporations and say, listen, you go to work and you're going to be able to keep more of the money you generate for the community. Right now, Texas has zero interest in trying to give out some of its money, because that's what it does all its special interests with. We ought to keep more locally. And I think me as a mayor would advocate for that for our representatives.
So have you ever recommended that to Ms. Hicklin or Mr. Buckley or Mr. Shine?
I have.
Or even Dr. Don, or Buckingham? She used to be our state senator here. So you mentioned Mr. Shine when he was in office, or Mr. Buckley?
Shine was my representative before. And of course, they've been, I think at one point,
redistricting.
Yeah, at one point it was Brad, and then it went to Hugh. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me on property taxes. I mean, and I'll give you an example. Before Hillary Hicklin ran, she'd reached out to me to understand some issues behind school taxes and property taxes. And I appreciate being recognized as really an expert on tax code. It sounds arrogant, but I know a lot on tax code, and I'm more than happy to share that because it's a very complex topic. I had Amelia Raybroker reach out, had the same conversation to understand some complex topics. And there's a couple of things I could easily advocate is, outside the role of a mayor, but let me give you easy ones that would really take the edge off the property tax bill. Right now, our cities carry a 3.5% voter approval rate. Why don't we reduce that to 2.5% like it is for school districts right now? Make it 2.5% across the board. CTC's got an 8% voter approval rate. Take it to 2.5%. And if a taxing entity needs more than 2.5%, then they just need to go out and make the case to the voters.
Right.
Just communicate, hey, we got needs that 2.5% don't solve. But the worst part is we have this 3.5%, but then we have this thing called unused increment rate. And this ought to chafe every single fiscal conservative in Texas. And how this was put in place by a Republican legislature, I have no idea. But it's the concept called unused increment rate. That ability to bank tax rate you didn't use up to 3 years in the past. So let's just say my city 3 years ago, instead of taking its full 3.5%, took 3%. Well, up to 3 years in the future, it could say, hey, I changed my mind. I want that other 0.5% back. And they can capture it. So in my own city of Harker Heights, that unused increment rate was a little over 4 cents of tax rate that they could reach back and change. So think about that. Elected boards in years past set a tax rate, and now you have a board 3 years in the future saying, I don't care what they said. I'm coming back and clawing that back anyways. So if I was king for a day, or if I was a legislature sitting on House Ways and Means, I would drop that voter approval rate from 3.5% to 2.5% for every taxing entity. I would get rid of unused increment rate. And the last thing that I would do, and I'll talk about where this idea came up, is people hate the up and down yearly fluctuations of their appraisal. And I would statistically smooth that out. And I brought that up when I was sitting on the CAD board. And the chief appraiser was like, Scott, great idea, don't disagree with you, but that's not what tax code says. And it was this light bulb that went off in my head that the chief appraisers and CADs have to follow tax code and appraise to market value as of January 1st of each year. So there's no room for artistic license to try to do things, but I think the legislature could solve 80% of the angst with property taxes by those three things. Lower the approval rate to 2.5%, get rid of the unused increment rate, and statistically smooth out appraisals so you don't see the up and down, but you see a smooth line that generally follows market conditions.
Okay. And I asked you about the ideal fund. Do you want to expand any more on the ideal fund?
Oh, I think 4 months would be a bigger reserve than any other Central Texas city.
And why do we need that?
Well, if you look at some of the Texas Municipal League documents, part of it just cash flow basis, making sure because tax receipts generally come in one quarter and then money is spent out. So if there was some economic downturn with sales tax revenue, there's a buffer of dollars that the city can use. And 3 months is a generally accepted practice. 7 months is just excess taxation.
And in terms of natural disasters, that money's to help backflow the city.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, it may be bad here. We may have a fire or earthquake. We should
not an earthquake.
Yeah,
probably not going to have a fire. We might have small fires.
But yeah, so
nothing like California.
So stores stop. We're going into recession here, and we're not making the sales tax revenue. What does the city do? Because when they get that rebate back from the state, what do you do? It's like, oh man, do we starve or we need money? Yeah. And that's what that money's for.
Yeah, and that's why. And I am appreciative and cognizant of people who say, hey, we need to have money for reserves. And I think going to 4 months alleviates that. But the question I asked is one of the old city council members. It's okay, if you want 6 months of reserves, why don't you change the policy to 6 months? And there's a lot of hemming and hawing. And part of it is they're going to deficit spend that money down over future years. I mean, this subsidizes future spending. If you look at my city of Harker Heights, it will spend more each year than it takes in property tax revenue. it will try to tell the public, oh, this is a balanced budget. But in all reality, they're taking the excess taxation they've taken before and they are spending it. And you're like, what are they spending it on? I'll give you some examples. Last year, our city government grew 13% in payroll in all the things than the year before, even though the number of employees was generally about the same. And we're not a very big city of 35,000. I think several hundred employees work in the city. How could it grow 13%? Well, part of it was giving cost of living allowance increases well above the rate of inflation. So we went 3 to 5%, depending on which employee category they were in. That still doesn't get you to 13%. What we went through was massive position inflation. So if you look at last year's budget and you look at this year's budget, you will find a new layer of bureaucracy and manager put in there. So now, give you an example, the HR director has moved up to be the HR grand poobah, and the person below them moved up to the HR director slot. And that example is across Harker Heights, position inflation. We've got a lot more chiefs. And that's how you get a 13% growth in personnel services.
Well, since you're talking about that, how do you like the 10-hour day, 4-day work week?
I think it's horrible. I think that is a classic example of really one of the reasons why I got in to run for mayor. Okay. Is this city government is, I want to flip it. The city government ought to be working for the people. The day that I filed to be mayor, the city was mandated for the secretary to be open on Friday to take that thing. And I brought my packet up there. And in just the 20 minutes I was there, I watched 2 different citizens walk up to a locked door on a Friday and say, couldn't get in. Then I rolled my window down and I told both of them, the city's closed. They had no idea. So the city has tried to couch us in terms of saying, oh, it's an improvement of services. And I'm sure there are people that did come at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But I would be more curious with a bigger sensing session is how many of our young mothers aren't going to softball games, for their kids, or perhaps are going and taking, exemptions. How many are really working 10 hours a day? I don't know. That's a long day.
It is a long day.
But part of what the city told the citizens is, oh, we're doing this for you. But then it kind of said, well, we're doing this as retention because people love working 4 days a week. And sure, I'd love to have 3 days off. But I'm in the contracting business. I've had to change my work to fit inside the city's conditions. And the city will tell you, oh, we can do emergency inspections on Friday. Well, no, I want to do due course final inspections of our work. I shouldn't have to change as a business owner to meet the city's requirements. The city ought to be adaptive to what its businesses and citizens need. And that was a complete step in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I know. There are a lot of people out there who would love to have a 3-day weekend every single week. In normal non-government places, they don't get that opportunity.
No.
I have a family member that lives at the house still. She works 5 days a week, and she works night shift, mids, days, and they shift it around, and they tell her when she's working. I mean, it should be the same thing in government, too. You work to serve the citizens.
That's 100%.
The citizens don't work to serve you.
And we're getting exactly the wrong direction in that. So it needs to be changed. And that was another, it seems like it might be a small issue. But the city cut off all citizen Facebook comments. And I get it. Social media can be a spot where people, get angry. But it's also a spot where people will give comments that if the city would look back and do some trend analysis and say, okay, are there some common themes in there? And actually, social media can do that for you now if you ask it to summarize the comments. We might find
it's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing what we get. We might get some really productive information from our citizens. But instead, the city says, no, we don't want you complaining about us, and to turn it off. And I'll tell you when they turned it off, is they made a post about Warriors Path Road. That road happens to be directly in front of my business. Right. That project has gone on for well over a year.
I got caught up in that last week.
Yeah.
I was going to a buddy's of mine's house.
Yeah.
And directions on our GPS says, turn here, Indian Trail. I'm like, no, I'm going to go work. And then I saw all the road blockage signs. Oh, no, now I know why.
So my business is right there. We actually we were not able to take a delivery because they have cut that road away so much without any notice to me, the business owner. It's a 13-degree slope to get into my driveway. So I couldn't have a delivery truck. We had to literally bring trucks down, transload it to our work pickup trucks, and drive it up the road. I had to pull one of my gooseneck trailers in, four-wheel drive load, to get up the ramp. And that project's been hard. I mean, there's all sorts of examples. And that project was given, and it was done in a closed bid, but it just smacks of just cronyism because it went to one of the county commissioners' construction projects. And people usually are kind of shocked when they're like, really? County commissioners? Yeah, he got that project. And it's gone on, should have been done in January. Here we are at the end of March. I went last night to the city council meeting and inquired, hey, when is it going to be done? And they're like, well, you got to put another public information request. But it looks like it was approved by the city for delays, and it'll go through April.
He said you had to put in a FOIA to be able to find out about.
Yep.
Why couldn't they just tell you?
That's a great question. And that's
transparency.
And I'm big for, it's funny you say that because transparency can seem like this multi-syllable word. People, really, what does it mean? It's about being accountable to the citizens. I have put in multiple public information requests, and I would always go to the city and put something. I'm going to give you a quick example. This will probably almost enrage. It's going to enrage some of your listeners. About 4 years ago, I had gotten a traffic ticket on Mountain Line. You know where the YMCA is at?
Yeah.
There's a little curve section on Mountain Line. And I was doing...
You don't speed there.
Well, I was doing about 30 miles an hour. And cop was at the end, pulls me over. He goes, how fast are you going? I said, I was going about 30, officer. He goes, you're in a school zone. It's 25. And I was like, there's no sign. There's nothing on this section of road. Nothing. He goes, oh, here's your ticket. I said, okay. So I take my ticket. I go right back to the office, and I know my way around the city charter and ordinances, and I go to the table of school zones, and that section is not in the school zone. So the city attorney who's getting ready to prosecute my case calls me up, and he goes, okay, do you want to plead guilty so you don't take us to court? I'm like, no, I want a jury trial. And he was like, oh, wait, what? I said, it's not a school zone. Here's your table. Month and a half later, I get a note back sent through the judge as the court case has been dismissed because justice would not be served. Said in another way is he wasn't guilty of anything. So I took that, and to give you an example of transparency and accountability. So I took that dismissal, and only then, for the first time, I sent a private email to the mayor at the time and the city manager, and I said, I have gotten this ticket, and I suspect dozens of people have gotten tickets before. Can you all please go back and make sure the record's corrected for the people who have improperly gotten tickets? And I don't hear anything back. It's like, oh, okay. I emailed the entire council, and one of my opponents sat in that council, got one of those emails. I didn't get anything back. Silence, crickets. So I said, okay, I will put in a public information request to the Harker Heights Police Department. And there were, I think, over 100 speeding tickets given on that section of road that wasn't a school zone, doesn't have any signs, and nobody would correct the issue. And I think, and I had talked to another city council who joined after, and I remember asking that person, I said, can you look into this? And he did, and he came back, and the answer was, the city manager said that every one of those people who had got tickets had the same opportunity to do the research that you did. And I said, that is just the wrong answer.
It is.
Government servants ought to have recognized that we had done wrong by citizens, and they should have gone out of their way to fix that. And they went out of their way not to do anything. That has stuck with me for years.
Well, this is a caveat to the next question. How would you lead the council?
Well, it's collaboration. So I'm sure it's like herding cats. I've been a chair of a board before. I know what it's like to deal with strong personalities, but strong personalities are usually just communicating strongly held convictions. So the first thing is just understanding what everybody is seeking. And I know Brian Burt and Jesse Miles. I supported them in their runs for city council. I've known Sam Helby for a long time. I think me and him get along very well because we're both business owners. And I think he appreciates what I do, and I know I appreciate what he does. But I know they all have different ideas of what they want government to do. So the first part is really understanding what they want for government and what their view on government is. That's step number one. And then I think is making sure that it's transparent to the citizens and getting that, because right now, when I go in as a private citizen and make public comments, the mayor reads off a chapter out of our government code, the open meetings, and says, they used to say, we can't give you an answer. And I remember telling the old mayor, I said, that's not what open government code says. It says you can give a factual response, restatement of policy, or put it on a future agenda. And I have never watched that happen. I have never watched a factual answer. And we ought to give more factual answers at the dais, because when a citizen comes in and asks a question, he's taking his time. It means he's concerned about something. And if we can give a factual response right there, we can do it. Now, that whole open government, it wasn't a protection for the council to not have to answer questions. It was a protection to ensure that things not put on the agenda weren't discussed and other citizens weren't aware of that discussion taking place. That's what open meetings is about. And I've taken that training for the CAD board. But we misapply it and we use it as a shield to prevent answering citizen comments. And I would fix that right off the bat. I would also do another thing. Every question that's asked or anything that's submitted as a public information request, I would put that into a city database so everyone sees what was asked. And then, and this has happened to me about 6 or 7 times, my city has gone back to the Texas Attorney General and said, we don't want to answer that question. Well, right now, the city council doesn't even know when that happens, because I asked one of the city council members, do you know how many times our city staff has gone to the Texas Attorney General and declined to answer? And no, we don't know. I said, because you don't get a report. So I said, imagine like a quarterly training brief once a year. Simple thing. Hey, this many citizen requests came in and we sent this many to the Texas Attorney General. These many are waiting to be answered. But right now, council members have no visibility on that. And I'll fix that.
Yeah. Did you retire as an 06 or 05?
06. I was a full colonel.
Okay, so you know about organization.
I think so. My wife will say sometimes not.
She was more of a brigadier general than you were a colonel. We all know our wives rule the home.
I have not seen the Arey family checkbook since OIF 1.
Okay, well, that's cool. So what are good and bad aspects of the city, and do you have a plan to fix it?
Well, we talked about the transparency. There's so many things. One thing, I appreciate getting this format. I want to have a city app.
Can I input one thing?
Please.
Change that one question.
Go ahead.
The north side of Harker Heights.
Okay.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people have a lot of apprehension about the north side.
When you say apprehension, what do you mean?
How much different it is compared to the south side of Harker Heights.
So
when you cross I-14, it's a whole different.
It's a whole different thing. Yeah. So let's talk. In our city charter, there were allowances made for a future Harker Heights to go to precinct level representation. I think we're about at that point right now, and I'd like that to be done. I'd like
that would have to be done on the charter.
It would have to be done in the charter. So let's talk about that charter. Last year, what did our city council do? They had the city attorney come in and say, here are some city charter things we want you to put before the voters. And pretty much all those charter changes were to make it harder to recall them from office or harder for citizens to put in initiatives or referendums. Was any citizen involved with that?
So was there wasn't a charter review board?
Nope. No, there was no citizens involved.
So here in Copper's Cove, every even number of year, they can convene a charter review board. And there's a committee of people that put together the change of citizens and some city council.
Yep.
And then they put everything together and then they bring it to the city council. Yep. That's something I guess y'all probably need in Harker Heights.
100%. And last year is a classic example of when I say the city doesn't really care about the inputs, that's not a cliche. That's literal. You just have to look at the example of our charter change, and they didn't even ask the citizens. Not one time. They took, again, make it harder to recall them from office, make it harder to submit initiatives, harder to do referendums. That's pretty much what they did in that city charter review. Zero citizen involvement. So I would like to impanel a citizen-led charter committee, which is, in essence, for those who don't know, a city charter is the city's constitution. And I think impaneling citizens as chairs and representatives of that charter review And one of the things I'd love to get them to is it time for Harker Heights to go to precinct level representation, because the north side is neglected. And I'll give you an example how. My own neighborhood, one council member lives on one side of the hill, another one lives on top of the hill, and then across the creek lives a third one. And it's from the wealthier side. We have generally neglected the north side. One of the things for me being a business owner in the trades is I have a newfound appreciation, respect for people who work with their hands and do things. Artificial intelligence is never going to, well, it might, at least with robots, but not the next 20 years. Pulling wire, plumbing, laying bricks, building homes. And every time I drive on Veterans, I wonder why we haven't made that kind of the destination for custom home builders and high-end, the trades. And we ought to try to embrace, because everyone loves to have clusters of economic activity. And building things, making things, improving things would fit so well on Veterans. And whenever we hear the current elected officials, they want to talk about, well, we got to get some lawyers, we want to get some IT. I had one of my opponents say, "Gee, we should have gotten the solar farms, even we're a little landlocked."
Yeah.
I don't understand.
You knew put them in Stillhouse?
No, I don't know. But what we ought to be looking at.
Don't. I never said that. Okay.
No. Yeah, there's so much we can do with the north side of Veterans, and whether that's through existing policy like tax increment reinvestment zones. But I think really where most of it's going to come is the earlier point I made. We have so many business owners in Harker Heights who literally built this city, and we try to give incentives to the people who are brand new here and bringing in a franchise, but we ought to be saying, how do we incent those existing owners and leverage their knowledge and expertise and networks to rebuild, some other things.
Yeah, because you don't want a franchise to come in here for 5 years or 10 years and cut, sling load, and they're gone.
You see it all the time with
money
stadiums.
Gone.
Yeah,
right.
You're exactly right. Now, one of the things I've always been introduced by some peers and friends I have is, and if he listens to this, he'll be surprised to even mention his name, but people would refer to Steve Carpenter, our former city manager and council member, as just a wizard. And when you look at Market Heights, there were so many things that didn't just come on its own. There were some other things that occurred on the other side of I-14 that had to precede it. Drainage pond, which is now where kids fishing. There was a lot of grants and getting things put in line that in the end set the conditions for Market Heights. So I don't just get to Harker Heights Council and say, voila, we're going to fix Veterans. It's probably a lot of things that have to occur to set the conditions to get Veterans to the way we all think it should be. And one of those things for setting the conditions is fixing the roads, because it's just shameful what we've done to some of the citizens over there.
Yeah, that's right. I was just on her the other day.
Yeah.
And so how do you feel the relationship is with KISD?
I think it's good. I mean, I do. I think it's good. I think, as we both know, they're separate taxing entities, separate elected boards.
But they have to work together.
I do. And I don't have anything to say that I would say I would improve on that. My view of KISD has always been colored by watching my wife work at Richard Cavazos in Nolanville Elementary. I mean, she's always been, just proud to be a teacher. She's to this day, I can't walk someplace with my wife without some little kid running up in Walmart or down the aisle of some store and, Mrs. Arey. I mean, that's a nice feeling.
Well, when I owned my company, I had former customers come up to me and shake my hand and said, "We miss you. We love what you did for us and stuff." That's cool. Yeah. I'm sure people do that to you also, but it's different when a school kid does that to a teacher.
We went to a restaurant 2 weeks ago. Went to the Gin in Belgium, and Jen had one of her former students. That was our server at the table, and it took it makes you realize we're getting older. But that
Really?
kid was a kid. She was a young lady. She was still, I think, just loved seeing Jennifer.
That's cool. So you'll love this question.
Oh boy, let me get a drink of water.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. what is your view on the VA 100% homestead exemption?
All right. So I'm going to start with one little thing. You got preferences, personal preferences, you got policy, and you got principles. And you should always remember these 3 P's. I think a lot of people will say is that was a really generous exemption.
Yes.
With 100, and for those who don't know, complete and full property tax exemption. The intention of that was to give it for those that were so injured from their service that they couldn't afford to pay property taxes and live in their home. And it is evolved into more than that. So this is the preference side. I will tell you that policy was put in place by a legislature that basically, remember, it was put in 2002, 7, 8. Fort Hood, people should remember, that was the height of the Iraq War. It was a surge. And there wasn't a benefit that couldn't be given away. That was one of them. So that's the policy that's in place from Texas right now. And we have found that political leaders in the legislature won't make any amendments to it because I think they're politically afraid to do that because they don't want to be labeled as anti-veteran. So that's the policy we have. Now, Hillary Hickling, good job for her. House Bill 2894, she gets it passed. But you got to look at the fine print of that bill because the only way that went through the Senate is they had to put on, too cute by a half language to get Harker Heights and Nolanville in there. It had to be a municipality in a county, not more than 370,000, or not less than 370,000, and not more than 380,000, which is Bell. And then they did the same math for getting Lampasas in there. And what that means is that when the next census is released, Harker Heights is no longer eligible. No longer eligible. So I told you my preference. I think that was a big benefit, and the legislature hasn't backed it up with any money. Now, let me talk about some of the money because now my city is supposedly going to get $200,000 from the city. I went down probably 3 sessions in a row, but last session I went down, and my city manager and my current mayor, my opponent, were down there testifying on it too. When I went down to testify to House Ways and Means and Senate Finance, my thing was you absolutely should be funding the reimbursement for the cities.
Right.
But if you provide this reimbursement, you make sure it's being counted as property taxes for the purposes of counting the voter approval rate. Else you will have given a windfall of money outside of the tax rate calculations to the city, and the people who have paid extra taxes won't be relieved at all. So I testified to that. You can hear it on video in both the Senate Finance archives and the House Ways and Means archives. My opponent, Michael Blomquist, did just the opposite. And the city manager told me that before we went in. He goes, I might be able to agree with that, but we don't want that money counted as tax revenue. Because what would happen if it was counted as tax revenue? It would go into the voter approval rate calculations at 3.5% calculation. And once it filled it back up, it would lower tax rates for everybody. And that's the relief I wanted to see for homeowners. And I testified directly for it. So when my opponent says, gee, I went down there and I helped get it through. Well, he helped get it through. And even though Hillary Hickling wrote to her colleagues that it is indisputable that people pay more property taxes locally to cover that exemption, she didn't make that change. And it was because of the lobbying of Blomquist and my city manager not to make that change. And it would have been such an easy change to make, and it would have been a win-win for everybody. People could have said the money's coming in and it's going to go back to the people that paid more money. Because let me come back to what we do pay extra. My opponent, Mayor Blomquist, Michael likes to say that my city is going to lose nearly $5 million this year. And that is just complete and utter fabrication. And I've told him this several times. I've told him this in public comments. Now, you are, of course, very familiar with the tax rate worksheet done by Belcad. And it's about 13 pages of documentation. But in there, we already talked about it, is that term unused increment rate. And that calculation shows a thing called foregone revenue. And it shows how much money a taxing entity could have collected but didn't, and then it converts it to a current day tax rate. My city, over the last 3 years, could have collected $1.2 million more of taxes. And any more than that, it would have hit the voter approval rate and would have had to lower tax rates for everybody to stay under that level. So when Michael says, "Oh, we're losing 5 million this year," it's just mathematically impossible, and it frustrates me because he knows this. City officials, and I'm going to say I've pushed this pretty hard. City officials and county officials have acknowledged that, of course, people are paying additional property taxes to cover the services across the city. It just makes sense. Michael Blomquist is the only elected official that still clings to this complete fabrication to the citizens that nobody else is paying more. Well, then I would ask him, if no one else is paying more, how do we manage to sock away 7.2 months of excess reserves? You don't. The comments are just completely incongruent. So I've given you my preference. Policy is waiting for Hillary to fix it. She said she fixed it. She knows that it's going to run out and it's really a short-term Band-Aid. But the principle I won't abandon, and this is the important part, is that, and I've said this to both of the incumbents, neither pay property taxes. I said, both of you all should consider, and of course the mayor doesn't vote, but you should consider withholding a vote for a tax increase, especially since you know the tax increase is to cover the cost of an exemption that you're taking. The Lampasas County judge actually does that. He goes, I forego my tax exemption because I can't raise taxes on others knowing I'm doing that to offset the very exemption I take. We've both done, who goes through the child hall line last? The senior NCOs and the officers. And that's the best analogy I can make. So last year at the tax rate discussions, that topic was brought up by another citizen. One of the people I'm running against was just completely aghast that would be asked. That's a lawful exemption. There's no doubt. That's a lawful exemption the state of Texas has given. I understand the background of how it got there, but there's no reason why an elected official who tells everybody that we're losing that much tax revenue, which isn't true, which blames revenue shortfalls while it stashes away an extra $11 million of tax revenue in city investments, it's just incongruent.
Yeah. So, a matter of full disclosure,
Yeah.
I'm 100%. And when
And
I was
appreciate
on
your
the
service.
city council and at CTC, I never voted for a property tax
You
increase.
didn't,
Yeah.
that's why I've always
And then I've supplemented that by spending as much of my money in my local municipality as I could to backfill. That I would never make it up because that's a lot of. Well, no, I could make that up real quick in 1 year. But I made the purpose of spending as much money in Cove as I could to supplement the property taxes I did not have to pay.
Great.
And, you know, a lot of people don't look at it like that, too. They'll say, oh, we're going to Harker Heights. No offense to Harker Heights, coming from Cove. But a lot of people do go out there. But I like spending my money around here, too.
Well, and I think it's a great thing.
Right.
We ought to be encouraging, everywhere we can, is how do we get our citizens to enjoy, recreate,
because that's that
money.
Secondary, tertiary runoffs for the money you spend.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of that ratio of our sales tax, where most of it goes to Texas and only 1.5% is kept locally for the city, you can't spend your way to replace a property tax receipt. Right. You can't.
But you might want to bring up that one about lowering the amount of money that the state takes in. Bring that up to Hillary and see what she says about it.
Well, I will, and I hope she hears it. Hope she hears it and brings it up, and or.
She's a friend of mine. She's on my Facebook and stuff too.
Well, I think it'd be great thing.
So the last question I have for you.
Okay.
This is your campaign question.
Uh-oh.
Why do you want to be mayor? You sell the people that's going to be listening to this. Why you want to be mayor?
Yeah, I want to be mayor because this city needs to work for the people. We have really flipped the whole model upside down. The people don't exist so that government does well. We grew up in an environment in the Army where we used to joke around that government work was pay wasn't as good, but the benefits were good. Well, now we've got to the point where the pay's better, the work days are better, 4-day work weeks, every 3-day weekend, and I look around and I see this city government not working on behalf of the people. And they don't want to hear from the citizens on social media, Facebook. It's time to flip that upside down. I have no grant. I'm getting ready to turn 60. I've got a lot of hobbies. I hunt and fish is what I do all day long. I do want to serve this city. I think the citizens need a change because right now my two opponents have been doing this for, I think, cumulative 13 to 14 years. I do the math. Michael for 9, and Linda's been doing it for 6. And it's the same old idea. So whenever I hear them say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, my question is, what took you so long? It's time to start putting the citizens front and center. I was going to tell you real quick about how something as simple as a city app, like an app, it seems kind of goofy. Well, no, it isn't, because a citizen ought to be able to go out and take a picture of a pothole, geotag it, send it into a city database, and then it get put into the work queue. That's easy. A citizen ought to be able to know and watch our city hearings from their home. There's no reason they can't. Our whole quarters are set up. The council quarters are set up to do all those things. They can do that right now. There should be a way, and I would make sure it happens, for citizens to be able to put in digital comments, emails, comments ahead of time to any public hearing, and it be heard and read by the council preceding that meeting. We do that at Texas Legislature online. We ought to be doing that in the city government. And I'll give you a quick example of last night. Actually, I'll give it from 2 weeks ago. The city went to go have an annexation hearing. Well, that annexation hearing, you know what I'm like on public notices. They put out a public in the newspaper, but they didn't put it on the city website, even though Texas code requires they put it on the city website. But so not only did they not meet the minimum requirement to the taxpayers, but they had so many other options. Doing the least isn't good enough. We have this Facebook. Why didn't we put it on Facebook to inform citizens with all the supporting documentation? Why didn't we allow them to see all the documents ahead of time? Why didn't we put out the financial studies to see if annexation was appropriate? And instead, we put out the least possible by law, and sometimes they get so close, they miss it, and they don't do it lawfully. And I want to just completely flip that. It's citizens. Government serves to serve the citizens. And that starts with transparency and accountability. And once you get those two things right, then you get the other things right. Then you get the roads right. Then you get the taxation right. But it all starts with transparency and accountability.
Okay. We're asking for your vote.
I do. I hope you vote for me. I got a tall task in front of me. I do. I both of my opponents have got political machinery behind them, and that political machinery will vote for their person, no matter what that person's principles are. And I will speak to any audience, on any debate stage, on any topic. And I think this was an example here. There won't be a question I don't answer, but I will not be afraid to talk in any debate. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make the encouragement that I hope our Harker Heights Chamber puts on a debate, a robust debate, because citizens need to hear answers to the toughest questions.
One thing I forgot to ask during the whole thing, and I read it the other day. Front lawn forums.
Front yard forums.
Front yard forums.
Yeah. No, that's a great. If you want to sponsor a front yard forum, please reach out to me. But a front yard forum was my way of saying, I want to get down and talk to you. And the way that people communicate and interact is just different. So just like the city doesn't want to take comments via Facebook media, well, that's how people communicate. I used to hate taking text from customers. I always used to like it, and it dawned on me. It's like, you know what? I might want email, but they want text, and I better adapt. Well, city needs to adapt, and I need to adapt. That means I need to get down to their front yard. So if you have a front yard, one neighbor, two neighbor, or just yourself, I will come down and talk just like I'm talking here and answer any questions you have.
Okay. Has Miss Nash or Mr. Bloomquist been part of any of those yet?
No.
Because I know you said it was in the newspaper, I believe. And
I've had one front yard forum, and I've had one front yard forum.
Okay.
They're more than welcome to join me.
That's a novel idea. That's great. I mean, I've done political campaigns for several years. That's a really good idea.
Well, I appreciate that.
That's a really good idea. I'll have to plagiarize that one day. I mean,
the ideas are free.
Thank you very much.
It. Thanks for the opportunity.
Stay here. Let me sign off first. But thank you for showing up and doing this with us today. How long were we doing this? Wow, we went over an hour. Land speed record. That's pretty good. Okay. So welcome. Thank you all very much for tuning in to the JP8 report. Listening to Scott Arey on his a bunch of questions. We had a good scope of questions for him and stuff. Put them in the ringer. But yeah. So thank you all for listening. Hit that follow button and give us a like and then share it. All right. And this is James Pierce with the JP8 report. I'll catch you on the flip side. See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.